Week 2 has officially come to a close. We are back here at No Hedge for Week 3. This is your NFL betting show where on a week-to-week basis, we're not only trying to win ourselves some money, but hopefully bring you guys along for the ride with us. As always, I'm your host, Collin. With me is my co-host, Bog. And coming off of Week 2, we're feeling okay. I came in at 1-4-1, down 1 unit on the week, but despite a couple games not going my way, being down 1 unit, really not something to kick yourself about. And Bog, you actually had a strong week in week 2 here, coming in at 2-2. But like we talked about on the show last week, coming off of week 1, now that we had finally seen these NFL teams get going and seeing how their schemes matched up in game, this is where you got to start fluctuating your units. And that paid off big for you this week, as despite the fact that you're coming in at 500, you were up 2 units on the week, which was absolutely huge. And in case you didn't catch it, we're going to give you a quick rundown of our picks from last week. Bog and I's first joint pick of week 2 was Kansas City. And while they didn't look their best, and especially the Jags easily could have covered that game, we obviously got a nice winner there, coming in at 2 units. That was my only winner on the week. Moving on to Cincinnati, that game was just a disaster. Joe Burrow, clearly that ankle injury is lingering. Offense still wasn't looking right. And in a division game like that, sometimes that's the way the cookie crumbles. So lost Bengals there. And again, our Giants, although they had a surging comeback in the second half and looked great, it wasn't enough to get us a cover at -4.5 on the spread. So that was another loss there. And that was our joint picks for the week. Going on to my picks, Green Bay, that was a tough loss. They had a 2-score lead going into the fourth quarter, couldn't secure the game, couldn't hold it out. So that was a loser for me there. The Pats at home against the Dolphins, I felt like they really had a good spot to come to 1-1 on the year in that game. Obviously, as you saw, despite having a chance at the end there, didn't work out in my favor. And just a disgusting push for me at the Monday Night Football game with the Saints on the road in Carolina. They ended up going into the final 3 minutes of the fourth quarter with an 11-point lead. All they had to do was keep Bryce Young out of the end zone twice, mind you. Keep them out for the 2-point conversion would have been good. Of course, they decided to play this stupid, idiotic mentality of let's play prevent D and keep the big scores off the board. Well, they let them run right down the field and absolutely gutted me with a disgusting push when they converted the 2 points there. So that was brutal. But for the last of the picks, this is where Bog came in big. I should have tailed you here. That was Dallas at home for the home opener against the Jets. That was a big 2-unit win for you. And like we mentioned earlier with our Giants pick, while they didn't cover at the spread, they at least came in and surged back in the second half to sweat us out. A little bit of a survivor win there. That was huge for us. But obviously, I made out a little bit worse than you for week 2. So, Bog, coming into week 3, how you feeling being up 2 units?
I'll tell you what, halftime of the Giants game, I was contemplating life a little bit. We're down 20-0, about to get eliminated from the survivor pool. What was happening there? I mean, that first half was absolutely terrible. However, the G-Men came through. Daniel Jones came through. We got the win. We're alive in Survivor. Live to see another week. And, I mean, won in fantasy, so that's always good, personally. But, that Patriots game for you, man, they shot themselves in the foot a couple of times. Controversial call at the end. But got to move on, right? Got to go to next week. So let's get going.
Yeah, let's jump right into our picks for week 3. And with our first game, we're going to be going right to the Thursday night game. And I know what you're thinking. You see the wall behind us. If you've been watching for the last couple weeks, you know we're big Giants fans. But in this spot, I'm actually going to be going against my heart, going with the Niners at home against the Giants in this match. I'm backing the Niners in this game at -10. The Giants opened up for this match at +6, and Sharps wasted no time jumping on the spread. As I just mentioned, this game is all the way up to -10 in the Niners' favor. And right now, the Sharps are just having a feast with the spread. The Niners, again, 86% of the bets and 92% of the money. So, like I've repeated for the last couple weeks on this show, this is another spot where I don't want to overthink this. The Niners have one of the most well-rounded, talented rosters on both the offensive and defensive side of the ball in the NFL. And especially with what I've seen from my G-men the past couple weeks, obviously week 1 was an absolute disaster. But even in week 2, slow starts aren't going to cut it in this league. You need to come out ready to play and firing on all cylinders. So with what I've seen from the Giants so far, although I loved what I saw in that second half, that was, again, against a struggling Arizona Cardinals roster. So in this spot, I'm not going to overthink this pick. I've always loved the Niners. They won me a lot of money last year. And so far through 2 games this year, I think they're looking really strong. This is a good emotional hedge spot for me. So like I said, I'm backing the San Francisco 49ers here at -10, and this is going to be my first 2-unit play of the week. I'm feeling really confident about the Niners covering in this spot. Obviously, as a Giants fan, I'd love to see us come out, keep this game close, keep it competitive. And hell, if we win, that would be awesome. That would be a miracle. But I just don't see it happening. What do you think about this pick for me?
Yeah, it's a smart emotional hedge there. Obviously, the way the Giants started out and you look at the way the Niners started out, it's a no-brainer. However, I hate betting against the Giants. I'm not going to do it. I don't like the emotional hedge. I just want to be either really ecstatic or just super depressed. There's no in the middle for me. So, listen, though, the Giants, they gained some momentum, right, in that second half. Let's see if they can carry it over. Saquon's probably not going to play. It's a big loss for them, but we'll see what happens. Thursday night game. Obviously anything can happen, but I think I see where you're coming from.
Yeah, and even though the Giants are probably going to get Jalen Hyatt going this week in the receiving game, I didn't even mention that. We're most likely not going to have Saquon on our side this week. Obviously, he got twisted up last week in Arizona, so that's tough, and that just adds another reason for why I'm backing the Niners in this spot. And like I said, don't overthink it. Take the Niners here, 2 units, feeling really confident about it. So without further ado, let's move on to our second game. This is going to be our first joint pick of the Week 3 slate. We've got Buffalo on the road going into Washington to play the Commanders. This game opened up at -4.5, and similar to the Niners, Sharps wasted no time hopping on the Bills in this spot. The spread is now sitting at -6.5, and like I said, Sharps are having a feast. The Bills are getting 78% of the bets and 91% of the money. So with our joint pick of the week, Bog and I are going to be back in the Bills here at -6.5. And honestly, that was a great bounce back game for Josh Allen last week. He looked really rough week 1. Obviously, pretty much single-handedly giving that game away to the Jets in New York, but being able to come back at home and show out for your fans, that was big. The Buffalo defense looked great again. They obviously looked great in week 1, but with the lack of productivity that you were getting out of Josh Allen with that first game, that was a tough spot for that Bills defense. But especially against the Commanders have now gone up against the Cardinals and the Broncos. And from what we talked about in, I believe it was week 1, especially back in the Broncos, I was high on that defense and was hoping to see a little bit of resurgence from the Broncos on the offensive side of the ball with Russ getting some of his playmakers going. But like we saw last week, even with a hot start, this Broncos team is just a mess right now. They do not look good. So I think that devalues that Commanders win last week a little bit. And especially going up against this much more of a high caliber team, well-rounded with that explosive Bills offense going up against an elite defense, I just don't see any reason to be backing the Commanders in the spot. And that's why I'm on the Bills here. And obviously you're with me on this one, so let's hear your take on it.
Yeah, I 100% agree. You got a young quarterback going against a very, very experienced Bills defense. Now, I do like Washington. I mean, I think their defense is solid. They got some offensive weapons. Sam Howell's been, he's showing some flashes. I just don't think in this situation he's going to do anything against that Bills front. So I think Buffalo -6.5. I think they can win by 10 easily.
Yeah, and you know what? Sam Howell did look really good last week. He turned it around after halftime and was able to claw his team back into that game. But for everything we just said, yeah, there's no reason to back him in this spot. Take Josh Allen, rolling with a little bit of confidence, going on the road this week, and back the -6.5. Love getting that at the hook just below 7. So if they do win by a touchdown, that is an easy win right there. And moving on, this is going to be one of your first personal picks of the Week 3 slate here. We've got the Falcons going into Detroit to play the Lions. The spread opened up at +5 in this game. It's come down to +3 in the Falcons' favor. And right now, the sharp money is absolutely loving the Falcons in this spot. They're getting 44% of the bets, but 71% of the money. So obviously, the sharps love what they've seen from the Falcons through 2 weeks here, starting off the season solid at 2-0, but Bogdan, let's hear why you're backing the Lions in this spot at -3.
Yeah, I just plain and simple. I think Lions are the better team. They're at home, right? I know Atlanta. They have, they're 2-0. No discredit to them, but those wins weren't really that impressive. They beat the Panthers. I know it's a division game. However, they didn't really move me. I know they got the running game going a little bit, especially against the Packers last week. I think still Packers should have won. However, I think the Lions are just way better, way more better coached football team. I think it's a no-brainer. -3, I think the Lions are going to crush them.
Yeah, no, and I think that's a smart pick here. Everybody is in a little bit of a honeymoon phase with Desmond Ridder, Bijan Robinson, and this Atlanta team. Obviously, their defense has looked pretty solid to start the year, but this is a good spot to buy back in on the Lions after all that hype, after their week 1 win against Kansas City. So I definitely like you back in the Lions here, especially a -3 too. Nothing wrong with getting them at a field goal in this spot. Moving on to the next game, this kind of goes back to what I was alluding to with the Buffalo pick, talking about the Broncos a little bit. We have Denver going into Miami to play the Dolphins. This game opened up at +3.5. It is quickly shot up to +6.5 in the Broncos' favor. And right now, sharp money is liking the Broncos in the spot. Broncos are getting 23% of the bets, but 67% of the money. So people are really loving the Broncos in this spot, but I am not. This is one of my personal picks. I'm backing the Dolphins in this situation. I was thinking about the over for a little bit. Obviously, this is a little bit of a steep line with Miami laying -6.5 points. But going back to what I was saying against the Broncos, I'm just fading this team at this point. The defense is nowhere close to where they were operating at last season, even despite the offensive woes of 2022. Coming into 2023, I was really high on them. I haven't seen it there. And obviously, with the way this Denver offense can start off really hot and then just shut down out of nowhere, I'm going to back the Dolphins in this spot. I think that, especially with how explosive and electric Tua, Hill, Waddle, and now, from what we saw, Raheem Mostert is running the ball like a dog, I'm just going to back Miami in this situation. You look at this game last week against New England, going on the road in a tough spot against Bill Belichick. The Patriots still have a good defense, and that was a scrappy game. Obviously, the Pats shot themselves in the foot here and there, but I can see the Broncos doing that again against the Dolphins this week. I think the Dolphins are going to be able to capitalize on a lot of mistakes, maybe some turnovers on the defensive side of the ball, and are able to get the ball back into his hands. And with how we've seen the Denver secondary playing, I just think Tua's going to have a field day in this game. So, Bog, what do you think about me backing the Dolphins at a little bit of a steep line here at -6.5?
Yeah, and now I'm questioning why I didn't take this game because you may have convinced me a little bit. But, yeah, I love Miami here also. They also have Vic Fangio as their defensive coordinator. He's super familiar with the Broncos defense. He's going to find out ways how to exploit them. They didn't really move me. I was big on the Broncos coming into the year, especially with Sean Payton. They got to iron out some kinks, but I think Miami's offense is just way too explosive. Their defense is starting to pick things up and figure things out. So it being a home game, different climate, I think Miami -6.5. I think they can win by like 2-3 touchdowns in this game. But we'll see. We'll see. Denver has to get their first win eventually, right? Russell Wilson's been, he's been getting better. Sean Payne's kind of getting back into coaching. Ironing out some of his kinks from the coaching side. So we'll see. But I do love Miami here. I might even follow you. So I'll see. I don't know.
Yeah, feel it out because, like you said, I could see Miami winning by 2 to 3 scores in this game, and my mantra, don't overthink it. If I think they're going to win by even potentially 3 touchdowns, I'm going to back them at this figure, not even sweat it. And again, if they only end up clawing out this win by 7 points, we're getting the cover there. So I really like Miami in this spot at home against the Broncos, a really struggling team this year. So lay the points with Miami. I'm not overthinking it, and neither should you. And moving on to another one of your solo picks here, Bog. You've got New England sitting at -3. You've got to be feeling confident with them being down 0-2 in the season. Like you said, they've got to get their first win eventually. I know you just said that for the Broncos, but again, this is just what happens in the NFL. It's a weird league. When a team's 0-2, in the words of Dave Portnoy, a hungry dog runs faster. So, Bog, you're back in the Patriots in this spot, and the Sharps are really loving your take on this game because the spread opened up at +4.5 in the Patriots' favor, and now the Patriots are laying 3 points against the Jets at MetLife in New Jersey. And right now, the sharp money, obviously based off of what we've just seen with the line movement, you won't be surprised to hear that the Patriots are getting 76% of the money and 82% of the bets. So, Bog, if I didn't already lay out your own pick for you, tell us why you're backing the Patriots, bounce back, and get to 1-2 in the spot.
Yeah, and like you said, they're just so due. I mean, this is a huge division game, right? Jets, they got the ball moving last week against the Cowboys. I mean, obviously they lost, but Patriots are just so due to win. I mean, they're a very underrated football team. They probably should have beat the Eagles at the end. I mean, could have, right? Last week against Miami, this week against Miami, they almost won. Came pretty close. I think against this Jets team, that defense is just going to confuse Zach Wilson yet again. I mean, that's an inexperienced quarterback going up against one of the best defensive minds in football. I think Bill Belichick's going to have the recipe for success, and I think the Patriots win this one in MetLife.
Yeah, and even though people will make the case that the Jets still have a very stout, very elite defense, I think based on what we've seen with Zach Wilson coming in, having to commandeer the offense, this is a scrappy division game, and especially, even though they're at home, these division games are always going to be tough. Bill Belichick's been in this spot, so I definitely see where you're coming from with this pick, even though I'm not backing the Patriots with you. And now we're moving to the 4 o'clock games here. This is another one of Bog and I's joint picks on the week. We have got the Dallas Cowboys going into Arizona. This game opened up at -7, and again, Sharps are having a field day with some of these early line movements. Despite opening at -7, this game has gone all the way to -12.5. So obviously everybody's feeling really good on the Cowboys based on what we've seen through 2 weeks with them. I think their score differential, they put up 70 and they've given up 10. So obviously a lot of people are loving the Cowboys in this spot, and sharp money's still reflecting that. Cowboys are getting 82% of the bets and 81% of the money here. And how many times do I got to say it? Don't overthink it. This is a very, very good Cowboys defense that's going up against Josh Dobbs. And even though he showed some flashes of being a legitimate NFL quarterback in the first half against the Giants, I think that was a little bit of the case where the Giants were still a little bit demoralized after that Cowboys game. And then when you give up one score early and then go 3 and out in your first possession, that's going to give some momentum to the home team in that spot. So the Cardinals were able to get going quick there, but this Cowboys team is just a whole different caliber from the Giants. I think that especially starting off the season, not only against the Giants, but also the Commanders, the Cowboys are going to absolutely punch them in the mouth in this spot. Dak is looking disciplined so far, and I think that's a testament to that offense, or the defense not putting Dak in a bad spot where he's constantly having to chase a game and feel like he's got to force throws and force plays to make things happen. Also, Tony Pollard, one of my favorite fantasy pickups in the draft this year. He's looking awesome through 2 weeks, and I could easily see the Cowboys coming into Arizona here, running Tony Pollard right down their mouth. CeeDee Lamb is also looking like the stud he is, just an absolute threat at receiver. So all things considered, especially with how elite that Cowboys defense is, even though we're laying a pretty big figure here at -12.5, again, I just think this is a no-brainer. I'm backing the Cowboys here, and you're with me, so let's hear what you got to think.
Yeah, they're just better in every single aspect. I mean, there's not a single position on this Arizona team that's better than the Cowboys. Maybe safety with Budda Baker, but even then, they don't have the depth that the Cowboys have. So don't overthink it. Like Colin said, take the Cowboys. They should destroy this team. I would be surprised if Cooper Rush doesn't come in like the third quarter.
Yeah, and this is another one of our 2-unit bets for the week. Forgot to mention that on the off there. This is a 2-unit bet. Again, they're just so much better of a team. Why am I not going to bet 2 units on this game? Hell, might even, for some of you out there, want to bump this up to a 3-4 unit play. Obviously, that number is very steep, so a little bit scary for some, but anybody who's been watching these first 2 weeks of the NFL, they'll know the Cowboys might even be one of the best teams in the NFC, right behind the Niners. So don't overthink it. Take the Cowboys here. Absolutely hammer them in this spot against an Arizona team that is running really low on morale right now, going 0-2 in 2 games, which they easily could have won. So we got Dallas in that spot. And keeping it going with the 4 o'clocks here, we got another joint pick for Bog and I. We have got the Carolina Panthers going into Seattle to play the Seahawks. This game opened up at +4. It quickly pushed to +6 in the Panthers' favor, and everybody is just hammering the Seahawks in this spot. They're getting 82% of the bets and 91% of the money, and this goes back to my betting thesis against Bryce Young for the last 2 weeks. Bryce Young, no disrespect towards you individually. the Panthers defense has looked actually pretty impressive through 2 weeks. So I will give credit where it's due. But again, with the offensive line play that we're seeing in Carolina and the lack of some playmakers at Bryce's disposal, on top of the fact that I just don't think he has the size and I don't think he has the experience to be sitting back in the pocket and being calm to find his options downfield, this is just a good spot to fade Bryce Young again. I mean, the kid just hasn't looked good. He's been under pressure through 2 weeks consecutively, even when, with what we saw in the Saints game just yesterday in the Monday night spot, even when the defense is bailing them out, putting them in good spots, getting turnovers that are giving them solid field position, Bryce is still unable to do anything. He's not able to move this offense. They're not operating at a high level right now. And again, a lot of people might have fallen off on the Detroit Lions last week after seeing the Seahawks win outright by 6. But keep in mind that the Lions are still a really good team. So that was a very impressive win on the road for the Seahawks. And with how explosive that offense is and with how many playmakers they have, and not only Geno being disciplined, having DK, Lockett, Jackson Nigba at his disposal, and Kenneth Walker in the backfield, this is just an easy spot to back the Seahawks here. It's not a 2-unit play for us. We're going to keep it to 1 in this spot, but we're feeling pretty confident laying the points with Seattle at -4.5. So Bogdan, again, give us your take and tell us why you're backing Seattle with me in this game.
Yeah, straightforward and just a better roster in every aspect. I mean, this Panthers offense, I know Bryce Young is a rookie. He needs snaps, but they suck right now. They look horrible. I mean, Bryce Young is lining up over the right guard. Like, I don't know if he got confused or what happened there, but they're going to need more time, but Seattle is a clear favorite. I mean, they should destroy them as well. They're better on offense. They're better defensively. They're better coached. I can't see the Seahawks losing this game. This is they should easily cover. Easily.
Yeah, I mean, that was a pretty embarrassing moment for Bryce in that Monday Night Football game. If you saw it, lined up aside his center, and I believe it was Miles Sanders that had to give him a little push. Yeah. So obviously the kid's got a lot of nerves right now. Nothing's been going his way in Carolina. So we're taking the high-powered, explosive Seattle offense coming off of a strong win, getting back to 1-1. So we think they're going to go 2-1 here, and we think they're going to win by multiple scores in this game, which is why we have confidence laying them at the -4.5 figure. And going into the last pick of our slate, this is one of my personal picks. We've got the LA Rams going into Cincinnati to play the struggling Bengals. This game opened up at +7.5 and quickly swung to +2. And I did not waste any time jumping on this line, especially when I was on Twitter and saw a couple things with people mentioning, wait a second, I mean, Joe Burrow, he might not even be healthy for this game this week. And given with what we've seen from the Rams so far through 2 weeks, this team's playing well, all right? Obviously getting a win week 1 and then keeping it to a 1-score game for the most part against the Niners for a majority of that game this past Sunday. That was a really strong performance, and I think there was a lot of offseason negativity surrounding this Rams team that clearly was a little bit unjustified. Even though Stafford's working with a young receiving core, these kids are balling right now. They're disciplined. They are running their routes well. And Stafford, I think he's obviously he's a Super Bowl winning quarterback. So actually, let me reel that back and not get too ahead of myself. Obviously, Stafford's a good quarterback, but I think it's his vision and ability to go through his reads and make plays happen when they weren't there off the get-go. I think that's going to be a really good spot against this Bengals team that's been struggling without the offensive productivity with Joe Burrow and this lingering ankle that's really been holding them back. And hell, if Burrow isn't healthy this week, I mean, this is a really good spot for the Rams to salvage this, in this game and get another win on their record. And I do apologize. I forgot to put up the smart money metrics earlier when I was introducing this game. So let me cover that now to give you another reason why I'm taking the Rams in this game. Even with that heavy line movement, we see why that occurred. Rams are getting 75% of the bets and 80% of the money. So with everything I've said, on the offensive side of the ball, Rams obviously are looking pretty decent on the defensive side of the ball as well. And going up against a struggling Cincy offense, which might not have Joe Burrow in this position, despite what I've said in the first 2 weeks, I really like the Bengals defense. They were one of the more elite units last year, so they shouldn't be slept on. The problem is they're getting no help on the offensive side of the ball through 2 weeks here, and I think those struggles are going to continue going into week 3 here. So I'm not overthinking this one. I'm taking the Rams, considering I'm getting plus 6.5. Even if Burrow plays and the Bengals win this game, if they win it by a field goal or 4 points, whatever the margin might be, as long as it's less than a touchdown, I'm getting the win in this spot. So I'm taking the Rams here. And what do you think about my pick?
Yeah, this one's close for me. I can definitely see the value based on how the Rams have been playing and how the Bengals have been playing. However, there's some urgency in Cincinnati, right? You don't want to start out 0-3, right? The Steelers just won. The Browns got a win. The Ravens got wins. So, you can quickly fall behind in that division. So I think there's definitely some urgency in Cincinnati. They want to try to come out and prove a point, saying, hey, this is not us. We're obviously a better football team. They might lay it in on the Rams. So who knows? But so I'm not touching that game personally. But at 6.5, I think there's definitely good value there.
Yeah, especially when you're getting a spread that steep on a team that you already like. Obviously, we're laying some pretty steep spreads on some favorites this week, but I really like what I've seen from the Rams thus far. So I'm taking the Rams, taking the points here. I think that's a pretty safe spot given the plus 6.5. So again, don't overthink that one. And that concludes it for the betting picks of the week. And now, since our G-Men and Danny Dimes showed up in the second half, came out electrified, Daboll must have been in their ear, chewing them out at halftime, because boy, did they look sharp in the second half on offense. I forget exactly what all of those statistics were, where it was Danny throwing for 250 plus yards, rushing. He had, 50 rushing yards, throwing for 2 touchdowns, rushing touchdown, had a passer rating above 100. He just balled out in that second half. He showed some good flashes that ended up obviously not covering the spread for us, but we got the win in Survivor. So fortunately, the No Hedge podcast and the No Hedge show gets to live to see another week in the Survivor. And this week for our Survivor pick, we're backing up one of our betting spreads. Again, obviously the bet didn't work out last week. Survivor worked out, but I think we're going to get not only the bet to hit on the team this week, but also if the bet's hitting, they're winning by plenty. And that's why we're taking the Dallas Cowboys as our Survivor pick in this spot. And Bog, just nail it home once again. I mean, what is our Survivor strategy, and why does that take us to the Cowboys this week?
Yep, plain and simple. Just pick the best team every week. In the NFL, injuries happen every week. You don't want to save the good teams for later, because if you lose out, you might not have a chance to use them, right? So take the best team. I know this is one of the highest spreads. There's no way the Cowboys lose to the Cardinals. Take the Cowboys, go to bed happy. You're going to live to see another week. Last week was way too close. Down 20-0 at halftime. I think we're chalked. Survivor pick gone. Giants lose. Depression. However, Daniel Jones pulled us through. This week shouldn't be that much of a sweat. Take the Cowboys with confidence here.
Yeah, they should absolutely obliterate the Cardinals. So if we're laying the points at 12.5, we're also going to take them Survivor and really not sweat this pick for our Survivor pool, because like you said, live to see another week. That is all that matters in your Survivor picks. So especially don't overthink your bets, but don't overthink your Survivor. So that's going to conclude week 3 here at No Hedge with our betting picks and our Survivor pick for the week. And again, this is a new show. We're just starting to do this. Obviously, I didn't have the best week last week. Thank God for me upping my Chiefs play from a 2-unit play to a 3-unit bet. And if only the Saints pulled through for me at what also started off as a 2-unit bet for me, that I ended up pushing to 3 units. If it wasn't for that disgusting cover, not only would Bogdan be up on the week coming in at a plus 2-unit winner, I would also be up probably about 3 to 4 units. So you really just got to keep churning. You got to keep your head down. You got to stick to your system. Don't let a bad week get in your head and push you away from making bets that you're confident in. And obviously, as always, stay away from those stupid player prop parlay nonsense. You got to just pick the spreads on a week-to-week basis. And if your assessment of all these NFL teams comes true, you should be getting easy winners on a week-to-week basis. So please show us some love, like, comment, subscribe, especially if you disagree with some of our picks. Shout it out in the comments. Tell us if you think we're idiots on some of these. If you like some of our picks and want to show some support, do that as well. We need the engagement to help drive a little bit more viewership to this channel. But like I said, that's going to wrap it up for week 3 here at No Hedge. So we'll be back here for week 4, and we're starting off the season pretty solid here. So hopefully after week 3, we're doing even better, and hopefully we had a whole slate of winners this week. And when you see us next week, we'll have a big smile on our faces. So we'll check in with you for week 4 of the NFL, and thanks again for watching.